Hi, and welcome to the very first episode of Causal Conversations. And I couldn't think of a better guest to kick things off than Mehrzad Karami, who first crossed paths while volunteering with Correlate Netherlands, the data for good network that connects data scientists with nonprofits. And right away, I knew I would like to keep in touch with him. Mehrzad is a Dutch-Persian AI entrepreneur, product leader, and all-around data for good force. He's been hands-on with machine learning since 1990s and spent the last couple of years turning academic ideas into real-world impact. These days, he's the CTO at Light Exchange, built an AI-first platform for mental health care, and also advises on responsible AI at the EU level with Correlate. In this episode, we talk about what it actually takes to build a meaningful career with data, the missing data black holes, and the very real challenges of staying grounded in impact over hype. So yeah, let's get into that. Hi, Mehrzad.
Hi, Anastasia. Thank you for inviting me. I was really looking forward for this session. I'm honored to be your first guest.
I'm really, really glad that you're here joining me. I love to start with this one. If someone met you at a dinner party and asked you what you do, how would you answer it, but without using the word data?
That's going to be a challenging one. I would say I am building applications which uses AI for normal people in their daily life to make daily life easier for people using AI. I use AI, that's correct. Yeah. Well, AI is not a technical term anymore. I think since 2023, thanks to ChatGPT, AI is a common word. Everybody knows it. So I would argue it's moving from a technical to a non-technical term.
That's a very interesting observation. I think I agree with this one. So speaking of AI, you were part of the very first AI masters in the Netherlands. What drew you in back then? What brought you on board with AI, data, and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a long time ago. That's in 1992, I started studying AI, and I was indeed the first group of students in Netherlands who started AI. At that time, the main reason for me joining AI study was I wanted to bring human nature into computer systems. I wanted to see if it's possible to build computers and systems that interact and communicate and feel like humans. So that was my whole purpose. And I was completely fascinated when the AI came on and I was the first year in Netherlands. I remember there was a funny story behind that. When I enrolled into the Free University, I enrolled for mathematics. I was good in mathematics and my supervisor told me to join mathematics. So I enrolled. But 2 weeks before the study starts, I found out about AI, that they're actually teaching it as a study in the university. So I went back to the supervisor. I had a discussion and a small fight because it was a little bit too late to change subjects, but I managed to change into AI. So yeah, always been passionate about what AI can do for humans. That was my main reason for changing my subject and going to AI.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But I also noticed that you started off not as a data scientist or machine learning engineer, but as a software engineer. So what made you leave this AI dream, or perhaps it kind of transformed into something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I graduated, there were not many companies who were doing AI in the Netherlands. And as a matter of fact, there were not many companies who were doing AI worldwide. We had it in research, we had it in academics, and I had to choose at that time to go into the academic world and continue as a PhD student or go into the marketplace, to the commercial world, to the companies. I chose for the second one. And because there were not so many AI companies, yeah, I didn't have many chances, many opportunities. I was lucky at that time. After a year of graduation, I joined an AI startup. A startup was called Trillion, named after the famous book Hitchhiker's Guide from the Galaxy. So I joined the startup and I was the very first AI startup in Netherlands. And what we were building at that time was we were building agent development kits. I'm talking about 2000, 2001. So that's 25 years ago. We started building agent development kits using the hardware and the software we had at that moment, which was obviously not enough to build real AI systems. So after that, I moved into more software engineering, building software, because neither software or hardware was good enough to build real AI systems. But even though at that time I was lucky to go to that startup, join them, and then go for building an agent system. And that was fascinating, even though we didn't have the technology at that time.
Wow, that sounds like a journey because like for me, the agents came into kind of this buzzword space very recently, and you've been hands-on with them since the early 2000s. Wow.
Yes, yeah. And if I look back, I would say the main principles did not change. At that time, we tried to build an agent development kit that was based on two things: task-based, event-oriented. So everything was working on events and tasks. And if I look at it right now with the Google Agent Development Kit, or what Cloud is building with agents, or what OpenAI is building, it is still the same principle, because that's the most optimal way of building fast systems. So not much has changed from the building blocks perspective.
Yeah, it's an interesting reflection, and perhaps that answers the question that I had earlier. What made you stay in that area for such a long time? Basically, you made the whole career around software and AI.
I always wanted to build systems and software that would be more human than just computer systems. So that was the main motivation to stay in that area, even though it was very tough at that time. There was no commercial applications for AI. There was no interest from the commercial sector, or even from the NGO part. Nobody knew what to do with data. So, but that passion kept me moving in that part. After the startup, I started for myself, and I did a lot of projects for different kind of companies. I did for different sectors, but I still stayed in the software and trying to build systems that are more intelligent.
And I'm very curious, what did the early version of you as a data scientist or a software engineer, what did you care about? For example, I need to admit that the earlier version of me, well, quite recent still, cared a lot about the job title. When I worked on demand forecasting data, I was called an analyst, and I desperately wanted to have scientist word in my title, to be called a data scientist. And what was it for you that was important, and maybe it is still important, or maybe not important anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, if I look back of all the things that I have done in the last 20, 25 years, the main mm, driving factor have been people. I always choose for projects or companies where I felt comfortable with the people, and I felt that I really enjoy working with people. I can build together, and I still believe that. I believe if you really want to build something really good, you need to have the right people in your environment and surrounding to do that. And when the right people are there, then 1+1 is not 2, 1+1 is 4 or 5. And I have seen it happen. I have also seen the other side. I have had those projects where not the right people were around me. I saw how difficult and how slow projects went on and how much frustration it created for people. So for me, people have been the driving factor beside AI.
That's very beautifully put. So it turns out that what drives you is the intelligence, people intelligence or artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And a bit of passion as well. Speaking of passion, and how did data for good or AI for good came into picture? When did you first hear this term?
Yeah, I think it was in 2018. In 2018, I started looking into what can you do for the nonprofit part for data. Before that, I was doing projects for the nonprofit, but it was completely in a very different area. It was more voluntary work for helping people. I did quite some projects in Southeast Asia, but in 2008, Correlate came across, and I had a talk with the founder of Correlate Netherlands, that is Andrew. It really motivated me to join the organization. And I saw how much value, how much power you can bring into NGO organizations and nonprofits to do something good. And of course, the crisis in 2018 and in 2020, COVID happened. So there have been crisis after crisis. When I saw that with AI and with data, we can really help NGOs do something good in the world, change, make a difference. So that was for me the starting point of joining data AI oriented NGOs and nonprofits.
And was there like a kind of a personal aha moment when you thought like, this is what it should look like? Doing data for good.
One of the first projects that I joined was with an organization called CrowdFight. And that was an organization that was working at COVID time. When the COVID started, there was a complete lockdown on the planet. This organization initiated by two scientists. One of them was in biology, and I think the other one I don't remember. It was not even an organization at that time. What they wanted to do is that to gather all the scientists around the world, share the data, share the knowledge they have, to try to find a remedy for COVID. It sounds crazy at that time, but actually they managed to get, within a couple of months, about 20,000 scientists around the world working together. COVID, trying to solve the problem. And there were scientists from different universities working together, sharing data, having calls. And that was the first project that Corelate Netherlands also joined, and we tried to help them. And we did a great job in helping them building, automating their existing data system into a completely automated pipeline of data streams and handling requests coming in. So that was for me the aha moment. I said, if this is possible, then anything is possible. That project was amazing.
It indeed sounds amazing, like especially the scale of a very grassroots initiative, bottom up.
It was great. Yeah. Can you imagine 20,000 scientists worldwide in a couple of months get together and work?
Well,
Completely
barely.
grassroots. Yeah, it's crazy.
I think we'll circle back to this one a little bit later, but I also couldn't miss the fact that you spent quite some years working in the largest banking institutions in Europe. So for a lot of people, it doesn't sound very, data for good. And I was wondering, how did this experience shape you? Why you chose to go there at this particular moment?
Yeah. Another good question. I know let's say what the common understanding of the perspective towards the financial sector is, especially because of all the challenges and the pains that the financial system, 2018 crash, 2008 crash, all of them has caused for the society. But my main reason for joining financial sector to do projects and work with people was just trying to understand them. Trying to understand what's going on in the financial sector. Why is it working like this? Why have we had all this kind of crises because of the financial system? How does the financial system work? And what I came across, there were two things. One thing was people are always everywhere the same. It doesn't matter whether you are in a financial sector or you are in a small startup. People who are working on the floor, doing the groundwork, they're always the same. They all have the same challenges, same problems, same understandings, same perspectives. There is not a big difference. Second thing is that financial system has been built throughout hundreds of years. And this system is something that not only tries to sustain itself, but also tries to sustain a system that makes the world go around with money. And I know I'm not a money person. Money is not the first perspective for me to choose for something. But I do know that without an economic system, without a financial system, you will not be able to accelerate as fast as we are doing in the current civilization. Let's take the financial system out. Then we will be going back to the old system where there was no currencies. It would be much harder to scale. It would be much harder to make a difference and make a change. So every sector has its own challenges, but also every sector, including financial sector, has its own good sides, which can be used for the good. But just wanted to know how that works. And it was a great experience. I stayed in the financial sector for I think about 12 years, worked in different countries, different financial systems. So I understood how it works. But yeah, I mean, I just give an example. I worked on an internet banking system that makes sure that me and you can sleep at night without having to be worried that somebody is just emptying our bank account. That's also important.
I totally agree. I recently came across the blog post where the person wrote that a lot of us, especially like younger generation entering the workforce, we're looking for unicorns. We're looking for a perfect job. We're looking for the values. Everything has to check all the boxes, while sometimes to make the change takes not a perfect job title, but a right person in the right organization to be interested in this change.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. I know that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are having a challenging time, especially now. But I totally agree with you that if you want to go for something that feels right and it is about people. Finding the right person at the right organization at the right time, that should be the key factor for you to choose. Don't choose a job if you're just starting just for the money.
Speaking of happiness and impact, let's move on to your time with Correlate. Maybe for those who are not super familiar with Data for Good Space, can you summarize what is Correlate, what do they do, and what's your role in this organization?
Yes, sure. Correlate is a data for good nonprofit. In Netherlands, our main focus is to help other NGOs and nonprofits do something with the data. In Correlate Netherlands, we focus on doing projects. So we set up projects together with NGOs, which are within the scope of social good, and help them find the right engineers, the AI scientists, the data engineers, set up the project with them and help them to do something good with their data so that they can actually accelerate the process of doing social good. within the sector that they are. That is Corelate Netherlands. Of course, Corelate is much bigger. It's a huge network of various chapters around the world, and every chapter works independently. Corelate Germany, where everything started, was very much focused on education and training, bringing data science and AI into the academic world. And nowadays, they're also doing projects on the side as well. But the main purpose is helping NGOs. That's our goal.
And what is your role there? Are you more hands-on with the project, or, for example, are you scoping them with NGOs?
Yeah, I started at Corelate Netherlands doing projects, but after a few years, I saw that there are a lot of volunteers joining Corelate. There are a lot of young people who want to do something with their skills for the nonprofit world, for social good. And I saw how busy it was in the organization to handle all the people that are coming in, NGOs that are contacting us to do projects. So I joined the core organization, and nowadays I don't do projects on the, let's say, on a technical level, but I help do the first contact with NGOs, set up the project, set up the team, select the people, send out the application, and onboard new volunteers. So for me, it's more administration work, but I think it's essential to make sure that everybody else can do what they're really passionate about, what they want.
That's very beautifully said, that everyone can do what they're passionate about. It also resonates with me because I was also part of a couple of Correlates projects, and I wanted to ask, was there something that you didn't realize about doing data for good work before you actually started doing this? For me, I didn't realize organization can achieve such massive impact without really some basic, for me, a techie, automations. So, for example, downloading, uploading files, manually organizing, and this takes persistence and motivation. And I was wondering, what has been your experience so far? What did you not expect?
Yeah, I think one of the surprising factors for me was how much effect a small group of motivated, passionate people can have. I gave you an example of CrowdFight. It started with 2 people and grew in a couple of months into 20,000 scientists. But we have had more projects. For example, the project we did in Kosovo with SLK was a project actually with a very small group of people. The NGO, together with Corelate, managed to change the government policy to save forests of Kosovo, which were completely being cut down and being destroyed. And now they reversed the policy. So I saw how a small group of people can actually make an impact. That was something unexpected for me. I thought it would take longer, it would need more people, it would need more discussions.
Yeah, that's an amazing achievement. The impact on the policy, policy level. Is it your favorite project in terms of impact?
I would say CrowdFight was my favorite project in terms of how scientific world can collaborate together and in such a scale. And SLK was my favorite project in terms of how a small group of people can have a huge impact on policy level. So these 2 projects are my favorite ones. And of course, we have done more projects, but these are the favorite projects.
Was there a like a favorite project in terms of technical stack for kind of data nerds in here?
Yes. CrowdFight was a good one. We managed to migrate the whole, let's say, ad hoc created running on a local server system into a completely cloud environment with pipelines, big queries, and processing units, and then integrations with APIs and tools that they were using. And we did that in a matter of a couple of months. I think it was 6 months. That was the most technically interesting project that I did at Corelate. And I saw how you can have, of course, we had great technical leads who led the project. And I saw how you can actually move a small scale project, which is running as a hobby project, into a huge scale, with the cloud, moving into a system that is stable, keeps running, and it can scale.
It sounds like an enterprise level solution. Were there any projects that you're not maybe particularly proud of in terms of the technical decisions that you've made? And if so, would you do something differently now?
I remember we had a project which we did in The Hague. We did it with a non-profit organization that did not have any data science skills, and they wanted to do data science. They didn't have anyone who would maintain the project. And of course, at Corelate, at a certain moment, we do handover, and we want them to continue with the project, but they didn't have those resources. Now, when that happens, you know that the project will not continue after you leave. And that is, of course, a disappointment. And of course, they can always come back, but that is not something that we want them. We want them to be independent. So yeah, there have been, that was one of the projects in The Hague we did. they had an Excel file, and we helped them to move from Excel file into not even a cloud environment, into a local server where they could actually run a database and manage data structures. That's very small scale. When you leave, they cannot maintain it. Of course, they can always come back to Corelab because we do multi-phase projects. That is an example of a project that it could have gone better if there were more resources also on the NGO side. But of course, every NGO struggles with finances, with expertise, with people and resources. And we understand it. It doesn't stop us doing projects.
What would you have done differently, knowing that it's going to be hard for this organization to maintain the database on their own?
One of the things that we could do is training and education. So one thing that you can do, if there is a project like that and you know, well, the skill is not there, you could give them training and education so that at least one of the people in the NGO can maintain the project and continue with it. One other thing is always having a checkup, maybe after 6 months or a year, to see how the NGOs are doing. Those are two things that we can work on within Corelate. But I think if we can add those things into Corelate operations, it would provide more continuity and more certainty in terms of project continuation and also MPO work.
Thanks for these reflections. And I was wondering, how do you keep the energy high in this very diverse group of people? Like we were discussing just recently that Gen Z work ethics is different, right? And how do you manage that?
Definitely, Gen Z and Gen Alpha compared to my generation has a very different working culture, which is great. And I love it. When I talk to young people or onboard new volunteers, I never have anything in terms of telling them what to do. I always want first to hear them. My approach is always, also with new volunteers, first try to understand them and then help them understand what Corelate does. So for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they have great ambition. They are much more aware of their own being and their own well-being and what they want from the life. If I compare to my generation was all about work. Even the generation before me was even more about work. Gen Z and Gen Alpha has a very different approach in life. Well-being. What do I want from my life? How much time do I want to spend on work? How much time do I want to spend on myself? And understanding society and understanding people around me. And I think there is this misconception, especially from the old generation, that they think Gen Z and Gen Alpha are lazy. But if I look at the number of volunteers that you're getting from Gen Z and Gen Alpha, it's just amazing. There is no Gen Z and Gen Alpha who's lazy. Everybody wants to help. They have a very different approach than the other generations, and that is something that needs to be understood, if you ask. So, and I'm really happy to be able to interact with that with those kind of people and those young generations.
Amazing. It's very optimistic point of view, and I also agree with this one. Let's move on to your kind of tips and tricks on how to become a better data professional. I was scrolling through your LinkedIn and found an article from a while ago where you wrote about black holes of missing data in science and also like nonprofit space. And what's your take on navigating the unknowns, technically and mentally?
Yes, that's a good point. I would say if you want to learn something and get into data and AI, just try to get your hands on really practical projects and just get hands-on experience. This was very different in my time. When I studied, everybody was into books. Everyone was into studying. And then you study 3 books, do an exam, then go programming. I do not advise that for the Gen Z and Gen Alpha. The reason for that is the speed of the change in technology, in data, and in AI is so fast that focusing on only studying and not getting hands-on experience, you'll be always late. If you get your hands-on experience on the things that are happening, just give an example, join an open source project, join a data for good project. And when you have a feeling of how things work, you can contribute to it. Also will help you to better understand how the market works, especially for the job market. What do companies need? What are the things that big corporates that are going through the change? What is it that they would need and they're not aware of? And if you have the hands-on experience, you can provide them a solution that normally with their own processes, it would take them 6 months to do, while you can do it in 2 weeks. And I have seen it happen. So that would be my advice. In terms of black holes, there is lack of data in everything that is happening with AI development. Now, that black hole, of data needs to find a solution in order to make sure that the AI development keeps going on better and faster, whether that would be synthetic data solutions, whether that would be physical AIs in terms of collecting data by experiencing the world. These are different approaches. There are so many challenges in AI that still need to be solved.
Well, you mentioned quite some challenges, but circling back to what you were talking about in the very beginning, people and making human-computer interaction more smooth. Are you optimistic when it comes to where AI is leading us, or you're more fearful?
I am optimistic. I'm very optimistic, but that's my nature. I do think that democratization of data and AI is a key factor in leading the AI and data into a direction that would work for the society and not just for big corporations. There is a saying, if you want to predict the future, the best way to do it is to contribute to it. So if you want to do that, then you need to be involved in helping shape the future of AI for us. And that is doing open source projects, getting involved into communities, doing data for good. And I think that's really important. Contribute to the future if you want to know how it looks like.
Oh, this is very beautifully said. So, moving on from more philosophical topics to more lighthearted ones, short questions. Tool or habit that's been a game changer for you recently?
Letting more and more go of just reading stuff, but just trying things. That has been a game changer for me, especially in the last few years.
Right. And what's one thing that you believed about data work 5 years ago and you don't believe it anymore?
Yes, 5 years ago, I believed big data is really important, data lakes and big data, and now I don't. It's not as important as people thought.
I feel like the whole term big data is like really fading away.
Yes, I totally agree.
What is something non-technical that made you better at your job or data for good projects?
Coaching into soft skills. That really helped me. On average, technical people are introverts. We are not really communicative because we are spending 10 to 12 hours a day behind the computer instead of talking to people. But having those soft skills has been a huge positive impact, has had a huge positive impact on my life, career and personal.
And what about technical stuff that made you better? Maybe your favorite phone app.
So there's this app, a couple of people are working on it, which is called Ash. It's a AI therapy app, and I wanted just to try it out. When you see AI is trying to help people as a therapist, it's really cool. It gives you some interesting insights. So, but my all-time favorite AI app is Gemini. So I think Gemini is a great personalized AI agent, but it has a great knowledge base behind it that really helps to get the right answer. I'm not promoting it, but it's my favorite app.
Duly noted. So, what I hear from people is that data for good space sounds often like low budget, strict regulation, but also what you mentioned, enthusiastic people. If you could rebrand data for good space with one sentence or image, what would you want people to picture?
I would say AI for humans, or maybe AI for society. That's what comes to my mind.
So by this, I'm wrapping this up. Many thanks, Mehrzad, for joining, and speak to you later.
It was a great conversation, and I'm honored to be your first guest. Thank you.